And it's Friday. United States of America. Trash. Trash. Put out the trash, Flegel. AAR waste carloads. How much trash you lot put out in the United States. And you can see that's in blue. In red is the US GDP, and they run together. They are coincidentally running together. Anyway, all the way, except right now, where the figure for waste carloads has gone all the way down, 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 well negative, and the GDP is just about hanging up there. So one of those two is wrong. There's likely to be a bit of a turn down, but it's just a repeat towards the end of this year for US GDP. Might not go negative, but anything down towards 1% is very, very blah. This is the US dollar index, USDX, and it's a year-long chart. And you can see a year ago it was 74, and it's just really been going bottom left, top right, and now it's touched 84. It's just come off a little bit in the last few days, but it's gone from 74 to 84. The dollar is strengthening and strengthening. I can't imagine the powers that be will want this to strengthen any longer at all. So they might do this quantitative easing stuff or some other sort of thing that makes the US dollar weaken for Obama to get his doubling exports in 2 days or whatever he wanted. But that is getting too strong for the US dollar, and it should have to be weakened. This is from Iran. Iranians reportedly protest against high food prices. Now, when it comes to talking about Iranians, Iran on your television set, these people in the photo are Iranians. Yeah? Okay. Just remember that. Those are Iranians. Just trying to make a living. And the United States is forcing the rest of the world to ruin the Iranian currency. So they the best way to ruin the country is to ruin the currency, and that's what they're doing. I don't know why. Over in dear old Europe, again one of these lagging sort of things. This is a market flash PMI index, advanced looking jobby, and the blue is the advanced looking jobby, and the GDP lags behind because the governmental authorities have to get in all sorts of information before they can pronounce on it. And it's just going down and staying down in the Eurozone. So GDP will be going down in the Eurozone. And this is just prevalent all over the world. It's going to be a world turn down. Nothing major to start with, but when a world turns down, as it did in late 2008/2009, it generally mashes in on itself and can well turn into a disaster. But best we can say for the moment, it certainly ain't going up, kids. It's going to be going down towards the end of this year. Now, I'm going to read from, it looks like Ambrose Evans Pritchard in the Telegraph, and from the 4 paragraphs we're going to get some info about the IMF and Europe, because Europe's the big bomb with the ticking fuse. Ticking fuse? Time is running out. Yes, I know we've heard this over and over, and you get time is running out, Eurozone fatigue. But each day it is running out, and the Euro politicians have gone on holiday now. If he's going to do it, he'd better get a move on. This is talking about the Mario Draghi at the ECB. Either way, it may end up breaking the euro. The ECB is damned if it does by the Northern Bloc. Because yesterday when he said, we, the ECB, will do anything in our power, the words that came before that, repeated twice, was within our remit. Repeated twice. Within our remit, we will do what is necessary to save the euro. Within our remit is bowing to the Northern Bloc, who knows most all of the big things that they can do to save the euro are not within their remit. And damned if it doesn't by the depression engulfed South. Self-explanatory. Even the normally cowardly International Monetary Fund, traditionally neutered by the power of its larger European members, has been shocked by the deepening catastrophe in Europe, creating for itself into demanding extensive quantitative easing. So the IMF is saying, come on you magic money boys, let's get some money going. Because the choice always has been the Northern Bloc pay, basically Germany pays, or the funny money brigade in the ECB pays. Germany is saying they're not going to pay. If they don't pay, Holland won't pay, Austria won't pay, so the funny money brigade have got to pay. So the IMF are going panicky, panicky, panicking. Okay, funny money people pay then. In an analysis of the Eurozone crisis last week, which is an amazing document, but don't try and read it, the IMF came as close as it ever dared to admitting that the single currency was doomed as an endeavour in its present form, lacking both the institutions to make monetary union work and the political will to create them. Throughout this crisis, the IMF has acted like a creature of the Eurozone policy elite, closing its eyes to the all-too-obvious reality, ducking difficult decisions and bending its resources and expertise to propping up what the political philosopher John Gray has rightly dubbed a primitive relic of 20th century utopian thinking. Just the idea that you can invent a currency, throw it in there, and it will draw everyone together. It was a political dream. In providing financial support to the troubled periphery nations, the fund has neglected key elements of the conditionality that normally accompanies an IMF program, such as devaluation and monetary support to offset the prescribed fiscal austerity. The stuff that they do out east after the Asian crisis is nothing like they're doing in Europe, and they've got no justification for changing the rules. Forex Lives gives us ECB's Nowotny, sees arguments for giving ESM, that's the second and new and not yet approved by the German Parliament, let's say, but it's their Supreme Court. It's not. We've got EFSF going to turn into the ESM, which is going to save the world. It's not yet approved, but when it is approved, this guy from the ECB says, "I'll give it a banking license," because the ECB has been looking after the children and doesn't want to do it anymore, and says ESM now is the guy for the job, but I know he hasn't got the patience equivalent, hasn't got the money to do it. Somewhere they've got to get the money from. Give them a banking license, and as soon as they've got a banking license, they can, this is why it's not going to happen, they can't get enough money just as a bank on their own. They'd have to be putting huge quantities to the ECB and getting cash back and circulating extra that way. But the ECB, Nowotny's friends in the ECB, will soon dig him in the ribs and tell him to shut his cake hole. The ECB will not approve of the ESM getting a banking license because it would just grab the ECB, because then banking has a hold on the central bank, and the ECB does not want to be held by a government's controlled ESM bailout fund. So I can't see the ESM getting a banking license. In the article, ESM gaining banking license is an ongoing discussion. It won't go through. ECB not talking about negative deposit rates for now, and they note in Forex Live that that's a shame. But I've read a lot that says if they go negative, there's a lot of the financial industry down in that triangle that would go poo-poo very, very quickly. In the UK, with their third quarter of recession, this is comparing UK recessions, so it's a bit like the Joker chart, and this is per capita GDP. And note, when you get GDPs, it's always best to get per capita ones because of the change of population. Can make an awful lot of difference. So comparing the 1973, 76, 79, 83 and 1990, 1993 recessions, doubler dippers, long recessions, with this 2008 one, it's clear that the others after 2 years looked like they were at the bottom and started taking off again, and this one did for a while until after 3 years it decided to go flat and now has gone double dip again. Double dip. It's just gone double dip. And there's no reason that that should go back up to the zero line anytime soon. It might not go plunging down, although it might, but there's nothing really good on the horizon for the UK. Right, let's do some reading here. This is a bit heavier, but it's interesting, and it is linked into yesterday's Martin Wolf articles. This couldn't be clearer. You'll just have to follow the article to see what couldn't be clearer, but it will be clearer what isn't clearer. Could be clearer. It's saying two things. First, this is the IMF, who have put out interesting papers. First, the reason long-term gilt yields, gilts are treasuries for the UK. First, the reason for long-term bond yields in the United Kingdom are low in the UK, and similarly in virtually every other advanced economy with monetary independence, note of course, is weak growth. That's the reason that the bond yields are low. Weak growth, not confidence or credibility. Bond yields are driven more by growth expectations. That is, yields are low not because of economic confidence, but because it's exact opposite. This is precisely what I and others, Simon Wren-Lewis here and of course Paul Krugman in the US, have long been arguing. Indeed, the specific evidence the IMF cites that yields have fallen when stock markets have fallen is precisely that. In the UK, I first pointed here a year ago. Second, that there is no reason to believe that slowing fiscal consolidation would trigger an adverse market reaction. In other words, when the Chancellor in the UK said that these risks of slowing consolidation are very real and not imaginary, he was once again indulging in evidence-free speculation, not serious analysis. Indeed, the fund, IMF, in the paper, accurately points out that the main reason yields might rise, the only real reason that yields might rise in the short term, slightly and not precipitously, it would be if fiscal policy were to be loosened, more money put out, less austerity, would be because of expectations of higher near-term growth. As I pointed out, this would be good news. In other words, if we get higher bond yields, it's likely that the central bank monetary and fiscal policy is eased, there's more money going in, there's more growth and more ability to pay these things off anyway. But otherwise, bond yields stay low because the expectation is for low growth. This is the United States 20-year TIPS, Treasury Inflation Index securities. 0.0, almost negative. Well, I think they're 0.09%. You get from the United States government over a 20-year period 0.09. 0.09, yeah, less than 0.1% over a 20-year period. Inflation protected, but we know what the inflation protecting means. This absolutely yells in the United States, same as Europe. No growth at all, or if you want it in shorthand, Japan. We're being Japanified. And Japan, as we know, started with a debt to GDP, their 20 years of no particular growth and semi-deflationary depression. They started with about 45-50% of debt to GDP, and now it's well over 200. If you imagine that the Western world, including the United States, are going to get through this in the next few decades without the government spending absolutely vast and mega huge amounts of money, it's absolute madness. They will have to spend this money. It's just a question of deciding that they will have to spend it and what sensible things it would be good to spend it upon. And they might as well make that decision now, because they are going to spend it. Or it's a general depression for the entire world for 10 or 15 or the next 20 or forever. They will spend the money. They might as well work out now what they're going to spend it on for the advantage of the world. Have a good weekend.